First, I would like to acknowledge and thank Mr. Robert Bernhard and Mrs. Willa Bernhard for their endowment that they set up to support our academic awards program. These awards are not given to straight A students necessarily. These rewards are given to maybe a child that's getting a D or a C. But these children have been removed from their homes, and they have gone to maybe 2 to 5 different schools in a year. And they're used to getting Fs, and they can't read and they can't write. So any child that the guardian ad litem feels is really trying and being successful, we support those children, and thanks to this endowment, to get a certificate and a monetary award each semester, which are 2 semesters a year. So this is a very important part of where your money goes also. I'd also like to offer a special thanks to Mrs. Jasmine Candlish. Jasmine is also our honorary host this year, and she made a donation in memory of her husband, Malcolm Candlish, for children who are reunited with their parents. And I can tell you, as a guardian ad litem, that's not real often, but it does happen. I had a 4-year-old little girl this year that was reunited with her parents, and it took them over 15 months to complete their case plan and to get off of drugs. And they did, and she's thriving and thrilled to be back home with her parents. And so that is where this kind of money will go. So thank you, Jasmine. I'd like for Mr. Robert and Mrs. Willa Bernhard and Miss Jasmine Candlish to please stand. Thank you. I'd also like to thank all the honorary chairs and Jasmine Candlish again, who is our honorary host this year. If I could have our honorary chair stand again, and please, thank you, and all of our honorary chairs. All of these names are in your program, so I promise you I'm not going to announce 100 names. I promise you that. But there are some special people that we do need to acknowledge today. We are grateful to our sponsors, our platinum, gold, silver, and bronze sponsors. And I will ask them to stand, please. Now, again, their names are in your program, but if you looked around the room, almost every table had a sponsor. So that is wonderful, and we really do appreciate your giving. We're also grateful for the Children's Guardian Fund Board and the Advisory Board, and many of them are here today, so would you all please stand? I think you can see the amount of work that was put into this luncheon, and I can tell you our board members work. They do not just sit in a meeting. I really appreciate them all giving their time today and to really help blow balloons and get programs, etc. So thank you. We'd also like to thank the Herald Tribune for their media sponsorship. We'd like to thank all of our local organizations serving children, the Guardian Ad Litem staff, their leadership, the Child Protection Center, and foster parents and caregivers. We would also like to acknowledge our judges who are here with us today. They give so much to our children and our community, and often I don't think they're necessarily thanked. But Judge Adams, Judge Burnell, Judge Berlin, Judge Dees, Judge Curley, Judge McHugh, Judge Walker, and Judge Quartermain. Now, Judge McHugh was our last president. Oh, Judge Williams, I'm sorry. Thank you. And, but Andrea was our past president last year, and she received this judgeship earlier in April. And so I took over as president, but we miss her, and I would really like to thank her. Also, Judge Walker is on our advisory board, and we'd like to thank him.
I'm Mike Cogswell, and I'm fortunate to be both a Guardian Ad Litem volunteer and a Children's Guardian Fund board member. It's kind of a dual role. There are about 1,400 children in foster care and group homes and caregiver system in Sarasota, Manatee, and DeSoto counties. 1,400. This number has increased dramatically over the past 2 to 3 years due to the epidemic of drug use. Many of these children, about 50%, are under the age 5, and many of the children are babies who are born addicted to drugs. If you ever want to visit court, you'll see a lot of cases where it's a newborn baby who was born addicted to drugs. Prior to becoming a Guardian Ad Litem, I did not realize the extent of the problem in our community. Most of us are really quite isolated from the realities of many of these situations of children who are born into very tragic circumstances. Over the past 2 years, I've had the opportunity to work with 2 boys who were born into very difficult situations. In one case, excuse me, the father murdered the mother when the boy was 9 months old. Over the years, he's lived with relatives, foster homes, and in a variety of group homes. If you've never visited a group home, you may want to stay away because they're pretty crazy places. At times, because he had a tendency to run from the group homes, he actually lived, he was actually homeless. He's now 15 and attending high school. He's involved in junior ROTC and is really doing relatively well. In the other case, the mother was a drug addict, and the father was sent to prison for dealing drugs. The boy has lived in with a variety of relatives and in a series of foster homes. He's now 8, and in fact, yesterday was his 8th birthday. Think of how different your life would have been if you had been born into circumstances like this. I think a lot of us tend to take things for granted about our lives. Fortunately, both of these boys are now in school and in stable and safe home situations. And they're doing relatively well in school. I'd have to have a disclaimer and say most days. They both have days where I hear things happen. The Children's Guardian Fund is a privately funded organization which provides an amazing amount of help to children who have been removed from abusive and neglectful homes in an effort to provide a sense of normalcy in the child's life. And I want to emphasize the word normalcy. These kids do not have what we would consider normal lives. And some of the things that the Children's Guardian Fund does, like funding summer camps, helps these kids have somewhat of a normal life. During the past year, the fund has helped well over 1,000 children. The fund provides cribs, clothing, furniture, tutors, summer camps, scholarships, driver's education, birthday gift cards, and many other services on an expedited basis. And I want to tell you a little story about something that happened with my boy who's now 15. I was in Maryland visiting my daughter who lives up there, and my phone rang, and it was the 15-year-old boy, and due to unusual circumstances, he had not been enrolled in school, but was getting ready to re-enroll. It was about 3 in the afternoon, and he realized that he needed a school uniform in order to be allowed to attend school the next day. He was very excited to attend school, which was somewhat unusual for him. So I kind of panicked, and I thought, how are we going to work out this situation? So I called Jan at the Children's Guardian Fund, and she hooked up with the young man and met him the very next morning at the school, bought shirts for him, and he got started in school. That's really just a small example of the kind of thing that the Children's Guardian Fund does, but to that boy, in that circumstance, it made a huge difference in that he probably would not have been able to start school for another week or two had it not been for the Children's Guardian Fund. The details are obviously important. What's probably even more important to the young man, in addition to the shirts, is that someone cared enough about him to meet him at the school and help. These kids are just not used to anybody really caring about them. Today we're going to see a moving story about an inspiring young woman, Michavina Tresalis, I think I said it correctly, who overcame many extreme difficulties in becoming the young woman she is today. As you will see, her story started in Haiti, where she was born in 1996. Before we start, we'd like to thank Judge Adams and Charles Clapsaddle, for producing this wonderful film. We greatly appreciate their talent, dedication, and generosity. Would you both, I think Charles is in the back, and Judge Adams, would you please stand? Thank you very much.
My name is Michavina Mimi Tresalis. I am 20 years old, and I was born in Gonaïves, Haiti. I lived in Haiti for most of my childhood years with my mom and my little sister. I lived with them until 2007, when my mom sent me to the United States to live with my father. She wanted me to have a better life, and she thought this move was going to be it. Upon moving to the U.S., I first stayed in Miami. A few months later, we moved to Northport, and I lived there with my stepmom and my dad. I stayed in Northport for almost 3 years. Things were going fine at first, but quickly changed. My stepmother started to be very mean to me. The abuse was verbal at first. She would say things to hurt my feelings and make me feel bad about myself. She would talk bad about my mom and about my whole family. When she realized that the verbal abuse wasn't doing much to me, she got physical. She hit me, and she would hit me with anything that she could find. This went on for a while. I tried to tell my dad, but he didn't believe me. It wasn't long before he started to do the same thing as well. Things started to get much worse. My stepmom treated me different from her own kids. She bought her kids nice clothes, but didn't buy me any. She cut my hair because it was longer than her daughter's hair, and she made me do everything around the house. At first, I wasn't in school, but later they decided to put me in school. I didn't speak any English, so things were really hard for me. A few months went by, and things at school were getting better. I was starting to understand English, and I was making a lot of progress. Although things were going good at school, they were still horrible at home. My dad got a job driving trucks, so he was barely home. That was when the abuse from my stepmother started to get worse. Luckily, it didn't take long before my teacher noticed that something was wrong. She would always ask me if anything was wrong and if everything was okay at home, and I would always lie and say yes, everything is fine, because I was afraid of what would happen if I ever said otherwise. One day, I came to class and I was told to go down to the principal's office immediately. Upon arriving to the office, I saw 2 police officers. They began asking me questions, but I barely understood anything because I didn't speak much English at the time. We didn't talk for long, and I was told to go back to class. I went back to class, and the day went on just like any other day, but I had no idea what was going to happen when I got home. A few minutes after I got home, there was a knock at the door. It was 2 police officers and a lady, and they wanted to speak with me. I stepped outside, and the conversation didn't take long at all. I was told to grab a few things because I was going to go with these officers. I had no idea what was going on. I put up a pretty big fight, but then I was told that they suspected I was being abused, and they needed me to go with them. I packed the things that were most important to me and left. This was late 2009. That evening, I was taken to the Safe Children's Coalition. I was questioned again, and they took pictures of me. I thought I was going back home, but I was told that I was going to Venice to stay with some really nice people for a little while because my home was not safe. So there I was, scared out of my mind, barely speaking English, and very angry. I had no idea what was going on or what to expect. My first home in Venice wasn't bad. The lady's name was Becky, and she was really sweet. Although I was scared and confused, she tried her best to make me feel comfortable and safe. Still, the first week, I didn't eat or sleep. I couldn't. That week went by, and then I started school. It was a new school, new people, new everything. I had to get used to everything, so I did what I had to do. While at my home in Venice, I got my guardian ad litem, Miss Tony. I didn't like her too much at first, but I didn't like anybody at that time. She would come and visit every so often, and after a while, I started to warm up to her. I figured, what could possibly go wrong? After all, she is my guardian, and nothing ever went wrong. She was really my guardian. I stayed in Venice for about a year or so before I had to move. I always had to move. Sometimes it was my fault, but majority of the time it wasn't. I never spent more than a year at any placement, but with every move, Tony was there as my guardian ad litem. I was in foster care for a total of 6 years. I've been in 9 different foster homes, a shelter, and a group home. I've been to 5 different middle schools, 4 different high schools, and I've lived in 4 different counties. I hated most of my years in foster care. Everything was always changing around me, and I didn't like it at all. I was so unhappy for a very long time, and I didn't care about life or anything for that matter. I was a negative person and felt life was a waste of time. Everything just got stripped away from me, and I didn't know what to do or how to cope. I felt there was nobody there for me, no one to talk to, no one who understood me. I had no one to protect me or to guide me. Life was an absolute hell for me. The moving around and starting over was starting to affect me. There was no constant in my life. I started to go to therapy. At first, I thought that talking to someone was going to help me, but it turned out to be no help at all. I was still unhappy. I was unhappy until I moved to DeSoto. It was there that I started to have visitations with my Uncle Ramner, my father's brother. My uncle was more like a dad to me. He treated me like his daughter. He would pick me up every Friday, and I would spend the weekend with him. That helped me a lot because during the week, I would have something to look forward to. I would look forward to the weekend. I met this boy named Velu. He was really nice and he was Haitian, just like me. We became friends, and it was hard being in foster care and making friends because I knew I was going to have to move, and sooner or later I would lose that friend. Luckily, it was different this time. Although I ended up moving, Velu and I still remained friends. This next move was the best. I moved back to Northport and finally went back to a place I was familiar with. It was also the best move because I was in the same city as my uncle. I started to see my uncle almost every day. I started attending Northport High School, which was the same school Velu attended. We started dating, and I had no idea that he would become one of the people in my life who would remain constant. I moved again plenty of times, but that didn't change anything. He was still around, and he would come and see me wherever I was. When I was moved to Sarasota Shelter, Velu visited and called me every day. He made me feel special and showed me that he cared about me no matter what, and that made a really big difference. My life didn't seem so bad now that he was in it. I was a little bit happier. Life was a little bit better. I started participating in school activities, and I began making more friends. Things were finally looking up for me, and it didn't stop there. I had court one morning, and I honestly didn't want to go. I never wanted to go. But that day in court, it was different. The court system had finally found my mother in Haiti. At that time, it had been almost 2 years since I had spoken with her, so that day in court was a great day. Now I had my mother's number and someone to talk to. I started talking to her on my own time. She always told me to keep my head up and to stay strong, and I did just that. I thought that this hell of mine would soon be over, but I was wrong. Things turned completely around, and it wasn't for the best. I had court again, and this time, the judge ordered that a DNA test be taken. A few weeks went by, and I found myself at a place getting my mouth swabbed. Later, I found out that the man I thought was my father all this time really wasn't my father. So all that time, I was living with complete strangers. I didn't believe it at first. I refused to believe it. But the DNA test revealed the truth. He was not my father. So now I had no idea who my father is, and here I was, by myself in this country, with no mother and no father. Just me and a whole bunch of people I don't know. I was just starting to get better, but then there I was, right back in that horrible place. I felt like foster care had ruined my life. I honestly wanted to die at this point. And once again, I felt like I had nothing to live for. I ended up moving again, but I was still in Northport. It was at this home that I met Wendy Cox, and I had no idea that she would end up having such an impact in my life. She was introduced to me as my immigration attorney. I was supposed to be her client, but she didn't treat me as such. At first, I thought she was just like everybody else who was assigned to me, just nosy and wanted to be all up in my business. But I found out I couldn't have been more wrong. She didn't pressure me to talk. She let me talk to her on my own time. She didn't treat me like a case. She treated me like I was her daughter, someone she really cared about. She took me shopping and out to eat and was just really nice to me. To be honest, that feeling was odd. It was strange that someone was taking time to know me, spending time with me, and not pressuring me to talk about my life or anything. Sometimes we would just sit and eat and not say a word, and Wendy was perfectly fine with that. We finished the process to get my citizenship, and I thought that that was the end of our friendship, but it wasn't. Wendy is still around. She still helps me, and I still speak with her on at least a weekly basis. I know she cares about me. She became another constant in my life. I moved again. This time, it was to a group home in Bradenton. Everything was brand new again, and this time, it was a house full of girls. I thought it was going to be a horrible placement, but it ended up being the best placement I've ever been to. It wasn't the girls. I really couldn't stand any of them, but it was the house parent. Miss Yolanda. She was just like me in so many ways, and I had never met an adult who was just like me. She was big on respect, just like I was. So because of that, she and I never had any problems, and we always got along. Miss Yolanda treated everyone with respect, and she was nice to you if you were nice to her, just like me. The group home was also my longest placement. I stayed there for almost 2 years, and it made a big impact in my life. Thanks to Miss Yolanda's influence, I started to do things to better myself. I started doing better in school, going to church. I even changed my attitude. After a few months of being there, I no longer felt the same way about life. That was also my last placement while in foster care. I graduated high school while in that house, and that was the last stop of my foster care journey. All these years and all these trials have taught me several things. That God knew I could handle this battle, and He knew I would come out on top. He never gives us more than He thinks we can handle. There were plenty of times I wanted to give up, but I had to find something to live for. I found people, and people found me, who are not just friends, but more like family to me now. When I realized there are people who care about me, I began to care about myself. I found something to live for, something to base my life upon. I learned that I can't let my past predict my future, and that we all need people to care about us.
Quite a story. Please join me in welcoming Mimi Trsalis.
Thank you guys so much for such a great reception. And I am so glad to be here in person to fill you guys in on the last couple of years of my life. First, I'd like to take a moment to say thank you to Wendy and to Tony. I really appreciate you guys and everything you have done for me. And I appreciate you for your continuous love and support. And I just wish everyone had hearts like the two of you. My life has been pretty well lately. I graduated high school in 2015, and I moved into my own place, which I have been living at for 3 years now. And thanks to Wendy and Lisa Moray at Florida Gulf Coast Legal Services, I've obtained my U.S. citizenship and my passport. Yay. And thanks to the driver's education program that Children's Guardian Fund paid for, I was able to get my driver's license. And then several people working together, including Ms. Jan and Mark Scharf, worked together with the car dealership and got me a really great deal, and I was able to get a car. I am still paying for it, but it's mine. And also this past summer, in July, after 12 years, I was finally able to go back home and visit my mom. And I plan to go back again this December to visit. And in January, I will be starting cosmetology school at MTI. And again, Children's Guardian Fund is going to help out by paying for my cosmetology kit. And I went to college for a few years. I went to SCF, and I just realized that wasn't doing it. So, I wanted to be a hairstylist, so I'm gonna follow my dream. And finally, and most importantly, I'd like to conclude by saying thank you to all of you who care. And when you donate to the Children's Guardian Fund, you are helping kids like me, kids who need love and support. And it's just the little things that make such a difference in our lives. And I just wanna say thank you again for believing in me and for motivating me. And I appreciate you all. Thank you.
So thank you, Mimi, for sharing your very powerful story and for sharing with us your courage. We are grateful you're here today. My name is Wendy Cox, by the way. And I have had the privilege of representing Michivina and being her friend. And I'm also on the Children's Guardian Fund Advisory Board. So we're excited to have you here today because today is a celebration of birthdays. We got the birthday balloons, we got birthday cake in your dessert cups, and it's Michivina's birthday. And it's the birthday of the Children's Guardian Fund. Now, the Children's Guardian Fund is 1 year older than you are. Michivina's going to be 21. So we got you a present. And I'll have you open this present in front of all these 350 people. It does open.
Okay, here it goes.
It's a necklace. Yeah. With an inscription, a poem by Maya Angelou. And I'm going to tell you what it says. It's going to be too small to read up here. The poem says, "Lift up your eyes upon the day breaking for you. Give birth again to the dream." So thank you, Mimi. And before Mimi returns to her seat, the people that she mentioned in her video and her talk, would you please stand so we can recognize you, especially her guardian ad litem, Tony, is here in the back. Tony, please stand. Her foster mother, Miss Yolanda. Miss Yolanda, please stand. Great to see you. Gulf Coast Legal Services, we have Lisa Murray and Adriana Dennis. Thank you for making her a U.S. citizen. Mark Scharf and Jan Vestal, who helped her with her car for the Children's Guardian Fund. Thank you. And I'll just give a little shout out to the new boyfriend, Mike, who's here. Thank you, Mike. We're glad to have you. Okay, Mimi, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Now you can go sit down and relax. You're done for the day. We won't call you up here again. It was a privilege, and it has been a privilege to be a part of Michivina's life. And I will tell you, yes, she was one tough cookie when I first started representing her. She didn't want to tell me anything. It took literally a couple years before she opened up, but I am tenacious and determined. And now we're best friends. And ladies and gentlemen, because we're celebrating birthdays, we have a birthday present for all of you here today. You'll notice you have some note cards on your table. Hold up those note cards. So it's our gift to each of you are these note cards. They're birthday cards so that when it's a friend's birthday, you can send them one of these cards to wish them a happy birthday and share with them what the Children's Guardian Fund does. So we hope you'll use these birthday cards when you are sending a note to your friend. It's a great way to spread the news about what we're doing here at the Children's Guardian Fund. Now, did you catch those shocking statistics that Mike Cogswell shared with us earlier about the kids in foster care and state care? There are over 1,400 children in the foster care system in our district, which is Sarasota, Manatee, and DeSoto counties. And almost 50% of them are under the age of 5. And every single one of those children has a story like Michivina. And the stories are different. But can you imagine coming to a luncheon and hearing all 1,400 stories? Well, it would be a long luncheon, but it would really wake us up to the challenges that these kids are dealing with in our own community every day. Now the question is, as a community, are we prepared to help these kids? As individuals, are we prepared to do something to help them? I'm going to just recognize a couple more groups of people. I want to thank the Guardian Ad Litem program staff members who work for the state of Florida. They work locally here in our district and statewide, And we appreciate all the work they do year-round. And if you would just stand, please, if you are on the Guardian Ad Litem program staff, either locally or statewide. Thank you very much for your work. During an average day, they work with all sorts of complicated legal and family issues for these 1,400 kids, so we appreciate them. And I also want to recognize we have 484 volunteer guardian ad litems in our district, and some of them are here today. They serve as the voice for the children in court, and they really become mentors and friends and people that these young children can count on. So if you're a guardian ad litem volunteer or have ever been one or are planning to be one now, please stand up so that we can recognize you for all your work. I'm going to tell you how the Children's Guardian Fund uses your donations. So we give kids what they need when they most need it. Our own children and grandchildren take for granted a lot of things they have, a lot of opportunities they have, and that's great that they can do that. But kids who are in foster or state care don't have that same experience. They often don't have even the basic essentials. So we provide kids with things like cribs and emergency clothing and food when these kids are first placed into state care, funds for a birthday party or a gift, which some of them have never had before, academic tutoring, music lessons, sports uniforms, bicycles, swimming lessons, prom and graduation expenses, driving lessons and fees to get their driver's license or permit, educational expenses such as a cosmetology kit, so a young adult like Mitchavina can enroll in a vocational program. So that's what we do. We respond to the individual needs of each child because we want each child to feel special and like their needs are being attended to. And especially to let them know that there are people that really care about them. So the Children's Guardian Fund actually has only 2 staff members, but they're pretty amazing, Svetlana Kaminsky and Jan Vestal. And they share an office at the Glasser-Schoenbaum Human Resources Center. And we rely on the board of directors, which is a very hardworking board you met earlier, to do a lot of the work. So when you make a donation to the Children's Guardian Fund, you can be assured that your money is being used wisely to help the specific needs of these kids. And I just want to give one more shout out to the Michaels on East staff, for the servers and the chefs and everybody for once again providing us with a very fabulous meal and experience here at Michaels on East. So thank you very much for that. All right, well, I want to thank you all for being such a great audience. I want to thank again Mitchavina for sharing her powerful story with us and for sharing with us her courage. And thank you all for taking the time to join us for lunch. We look forward to seeing you next year on Thursday, November 15th, 2018. So have a lovely afternoon.